guys, it's Mary, and today I will be reviewing The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I decided to film a video review for this book just because I gave this book 3 stars, which is, it's not a bad rating, but at the same time it sort of marks, for me at least, an average book, like a book that I enjoyed, but it was nothing special. But this 3-star read, I feel, as many that I had in these recent months, is more complex than that. And so I thought I'd film a review in which I could go a little bit deeper on why I gave this book 3 stars. This book was written in 1993, but it was floating around booktube when I first joined in 2000. I would say 14, 15. It was very popular back then, and so I sort of thought that it was written during that period, but it's much older, although I feel like the writing style and just the way the book is structured feels very timeless, sort of classical, I would say. The story follows Richard as he joins these college in New England and manages to get himself into this elite group of students that study classics, that study Greek in particular. As the book progresses, he starts to notice there's something amiss, something weird about this group of people. The book opens with quite a striking sentence, which is, "The snow in the mountains was melting and Bunny had been dead for several weeks before we came to understand the gravity of our situation." So, as much as I hate spoilers in book and in general, it starts with basically a spoiler. And so you learn pretty soon, what happened. And there's obviously no doubt about it. They said that they found someone dead after several weeks, so it's not like, he's not really dead. But knowing this didn't really hinder my enjoyment of the book. And actually, as the book develops, of course, you're given the why and how this ended up happening, and it was very intriguing to read. It was actually pretty captivating, even knowing what was going to happen. I felt like this has a compulsive quality to it, and I couldn't stop reading, even though it's quite a chunky book. I never felt that I was bored by this book. And the writing style of the book also is flows very nicely. I've read quite a lot of reviews where they say that this is sort of pretentious and very wordy, but I didn't really feel that reading this book. I felt this book was written very well, and it painted a vivid picture of especially the settings that were very few. There aren't a lot of settings in this book, but they are, as I said, it never gets boring. So I have no complaint about the writing style. The book is divided in 2 parts, and in these 2 parts you get basically, how and why this all happened, the aftermath. And the second part is where the book let me down a little bit, because I was really enjoying myself in the first part, and I had maybe too many expectations for the second. I don't know what I was expecting, but my imagination was running wild, and what happened didn't satisfy sort of, my thoughts and my expectations on what was going to happen. So that's the main reason why I was prepared to give this book 4 stars after reading the first part, and I did have some problems with minor things with the first part as well, but I thought maybe they're going to be resolved in the second, and they weren't. So I feel like the first part was really stronger than the second. And also, what this book as a whole was lacking was a bit of character development, in the sense that the characters were not very complex. For the majority of the book, I couldn't even tell some characters apart, some of the main characters apart, and that's not a good sign. Another thing that made me think a lot is something mentioned by Jill over at the Book Bully, and I'm gonna leave a link to her, I think it's a spoilery discussion of the book, and she draws the comparison between the protagonist of the novel, Richard, and the sort of leader of the group, who is Henry, the person that ties the group together. And she compares their relationship to the relationship of Robert and Gatsby in The Great Gatsby, and now I cannot unsee it. It makes so much sense. I do think that the author took inspiration from The Great Gatsby, but it doesn't work as well. I mean, it's reminiscent of that dynamic, but it doesn't work as it does in The Great Gatsby, because The Great Gatsby is The Great Gatsby, probably. But also, yes, Robert as a protagonist is very passive, again, as Richard is in here, and Gatsby more sort of mysterious. And we can argue that even in the Great Gatsby, they're not as complex and layered, but they still manage to work on a different level to leave you that room for imagination, where you can fill the gaps, basically, of what's possibly lacking. I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but in this one it didn't work in the same way, and also it pales in comparison. So, and I couldn't unsee it after I heard Jill talk about it. But even without this comparison, I just feel like there was something lacking in their interactions and themselves as in them as well-rounded characters. Also, the lack of a female character that was somewhat interesting, I would say, because there are not a lot of female characters in this book, which I'm fine with. It's not that I'm always looking for the heroine of the situation or the super complex I don't know, woman, but at the same time, the basically 2 or 3 women that there are sort of very meh, which, for lack of a better word. And this book sort of feels written by a male, which is not a compliment in this case. I mean, it was written by a female, but it doesn't really feel like it. But again, this is just another thing to add to on top of the other stuff that I said. It's something, probably, it's not a great problem, but it adds on. I read this book as a buddy read with my sister, and she's a classicist. Her area of expertise is actually Greek history and Greek language. So it was very interesting when she would, point out maybe some inaccuracies. There are not many inaccuracies. Granted that the author did her job well, she researched well, but still there are some inaccuracies. Because my sister, being my sister, she couldn't help but point them out to me, and it was very fun to have her perspective as well. She didn't even finish the book yet. As you can see, I'm not a great buddy reader. I was just so enthralled in this book that I had to finish it, and so I went pretty quickly with this one. So I think ultimately I really enjoyed my experience reading this book, and it sparked a lot of discussion and just thoughts that were interesting. I feel like it suffered a little bit from the debut novel syndrome, although what a debut novel. I mean, the writing is excellent, and when she first sort of wrote the bulk of the book, she was 19, so wow. But yes, I feel like there's so much potential in this that I am so curious to get on, another book by her, especially I'm thinking The Goldfinch. That one sounds like I'm already putting a lot of expectations on the other book. But yes, I cannot wait to pick up more because, this was a great reading experience, as I said. So yeah. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and please let me know if you read or intend to read The Secret History. All your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!